Most of what you believe about life are not your beliefs. Who told you the right way to live your life? And more importantly, why did you believe them? In this video, we're breaking down what I call the fear-based rules that society teaches you to follow without question. You'll start to see exactly how these beliefs were formed, why they feel so true, and how they've been influencing your entire life without you even realizing it. Welcome to video 2 of Against the Grain, Designing a Life That Actually Feels Good. I'm Angie, the Inner Glow Coach, and I help high-achieving women unlearn the rules they were taught to live by, become independent thinkers, and build self-trust so fierce that they can actually create a life that feels exciting and where you're meant to be. And stay until the end, because I'm going to give you one question that will instantly expose whether a belief is actually yours or something you've been conditioned to follow. Because we aren't conditioned to be independent thinkers. We've been conditioned to follow the invisible rules of society. But who made the rules? And why are we blindly following them? What is the reason? Or, as Cardi B says, what was the reason?
What was the reason?
And if this is you, let's just say, I understand. I'm going to tell you my backstory about how this played out in my life. And it's not to talk about me. It's to help you understand the subtle ways that this plays out in your life as well. I grew up in a home where we definitely played by the invisible rules of society, but there were also a lot of unspoken family rules. And I won't get into all of them, but some of the major ones were we swept things under the rug, we never had uncomfortable conversations, we pretended everything was fine, even when it was most definitely not. There was also a very loud and clear message to not be fully expressed or shine too bright, because my parents couldn't handle anything outside of the box. So instead of accepting who I was, which was a quirky little girl, like full of light and energy, but I had to conform to what they were comfortable with so that I could feel emotionally safe. And other invisible family rules were don't dream too big, because when I was a little girl, I wanted to live in Hawaii and drive a red convertible. But even as like an 8-year-old, my parents would be like, oh, insurance costs too much on convertibles, or you have to have a good job and work hard. And it was like I was always told like all of the ways that my dreams just couldn't happen. And it was always adult logic. So as a child, I just didn't really understand why they were like raining on my parade. And also I was also told that I couldn't go to an out-of-state college, which financially I get, but again, the messaging was very adult-like toward a child. So the overall message that I would get was, this is good as it gets, and don't dream too big. And I normally don't like to talk about religion, but I want to touch on my experience with church. We went to church every single week. I was raised Catholic, and what that meant to us was we went through all the motions that you were supposed to do, like going to church every week, getting First Communion and confirmation. But we never really talked about God outside of the church. It was just like checking off all of the boxes of what you were supposed to do to get into heaven, which ultimately should be about being a decent human being, but we never talked about values and things like that. And outside of my experience, some religions take this to the other extreme, where it's basically the definition of a cult, and the rules are so strict and rigid that it's actually very emotionally damaging. But that's a rant for another day. But my point about all of this is says who? Because a lot of the religions, they're worshiping the teacher, not the teachings. So it's all fear-based, because this leader is teaching this or that, and because that person is being worshiped, everyone blindly follows what they're saying. Instead of taking a step back and saying, what are the values of this religion? And back to when I was growing up, because I don't want this to be about religion, that's just an example. There was school, and this is also something that is still to this day is hard for me to understand, because I hated school, but I understood the system, because there is a definite system to school. You memorize information, take a test about it, and get a grade. That has nothing to do with the real world, but that is what the system is. So I understood the system and I got straight A's. But I remember my very first job in high school, I struggled with critical thinking because I was so used to gaming this rigid school system that I didn't know how to think outside of the box. And the worst part about all of this is, like, deep down, I knew I wanted more from my life, but I didn't know how to escape this feeling of just going through the motions. Like, I wanted to feel like I was thriving and actually living, but that didn't even feel like something that was available to me as I went through this life of just going through the motions and checking off the boxes and doing everything right. And also on the topic of school, don't even get me started on college, because at 17 years old, I had to make a decision about where I wanted to go to school and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Whose idea was it to have 17 and 18-year-olds make these kind of decisions? Even worse, who decided that 18 was the legal age of adult? Most people would agree they didn't really fall into adulthood until their mid-20s. And I'm not saying you should be dependent on your parents until then, but my point is, it's crazy about how many of these things don't even make sense, but nobody questions it. And then in college, this is an institution that you're paying for, but even then you don't totally get to choose what classes you take. And what I mean by that was, I was a finance major, but I had to take physical education classes. I think I took a dance class and a running class. I had to take science classes. I can't remember all of the classes I took, but I remember I took the physics of Star Trek and backyard astronomy. And I can't even remember what all the other classes were, but my point is, it's like you're paying to go and you have to take all these worthless classes that don't even matter. And even within the business school, so again, I was a finance major. In accounting classes, they teach you in excruciating detail how to do T accounts by hand, only to find out once I graduated that there's software that does all of that for you. So honestly, I would have just learned way more by getting a job and working. So who designed the way the college system works, and why are we still following it? It doesn't even make sense anymore, except to the university who's profiting off of people taking all these useless classes. And then once I graduated college, I got a stable corporate job at a bank because that was the responsible thing to do, and that's just what society and my family expected me to do. And at this bank, I was a credit analyst for the small business administration loans. But all I really did was push paper because the SBA loans were guaranteed by the federal government. So if they were to default, the bank really didn't lose that much money. So they didn't care. So I was just basically going through the bureaucracy to make sure that everyone submitted all the appropriate paperwork. There wasn't really any critical thinking going on at all. So I was bored out of my mind, and then I just went to a different company, and then I just kept job hopping every 3 to 4 years because corporate America was so painfully boring, but I needed to change it up to keep my sanity. And all of this time, I thought I was being realistic, being responsible, and playing it safe. And on some level I was, but the problem was, this didn't feel good to me. I wasn't living life for me. I was living for things outside of myself. And again, I just, like, what else was I supposed to do? Because when you're blindly following the arbitrary rules of society, you literally cannot see outside of them. So even when I would get glimpses of entrepreneurship or other things, I would just think to myself, that's not even available to me. Says who? And the real problem with all of these arbitrary bullshit rules is that they are fear-based. They are not designed for you to thrive and feel radiant. They're designed to keep you playing small because the fear propaganda around that is it's safer and more responsible. And again, on some level it is, but if you don't feel good about the decisions you're making and if they aren't aligned with who you are, then you're not free because you're living by rules that you didn't agree to. So do you want to be free and be who you are and excited by your own life? Or do you want to live and die under rules that don't make any sense and make your soul feel like it's dead inside? Because most of these rules are actually fear-based beliefs that are passed down as facts. They were designed for external systems, for their safety, for their predictability, for their control. They weren't designed for your personal happiness and fulfillment. So this is your permission to start questioning everything, especially things that don't make sense. This is what it means to be an independent thinker. In my second job out of college, I had a manager and he would question everything I said with why? Or he would give an opposing opinion. And at first, I hated it. I actually thought he hated me. And eventually, he let me in on his secret. He wanted me to be able to think through my decisions and justify them, especially when other people didn't agree. And to this day, that was one of the most valuable lessons I have ever been gifted, because that was the beginning of my journey to be a critical, independent thinker. And now I don't accept shit. I want to know why. Why are we doing it this way? Does the reason make sense? So what this looks like in real life is you start challenging advice and you stop defaulting to what makes sense. We don't blindly follow the arbitrary rules of society anymore, which leads us to our action step. And again, if you're new to this channel, the reason we have an action step in all of my videos is because information is everywhere. But if you really want to implement and embody changes in your life, you have to take action, and it starts with one simple step. So today, pick one belief that you've always followed and ask yourself, who told me this? And do I actually agree? And you could do this for anything, but a really good area of your life to do this is money. Because a few years ago, I dug into my own limiting beliefs about money, and it was actually very scary. I mean, you just heard me bragging about what an independent thinker I am, but I had really deep-rooted beliefs about money that were not mine at all. They were my parents, and I had been blindly following them. That's how much this sneaks up on you, because they're so embedded in your subconscious brain that you're not even consciously aware of them. So you're just blindly following them. Not anymore. So pick one belief that you've always followed. Who told me this? And do I actually agree? So for example, I'm going to give you a money belief that I used to have. And it stemmed from, my mom's belief was rich people are sinful. And it stemmed from a scarcity belief. If you have money, then you're taking it away from other people. So I didn't have the belief that rich people are sinful, but I remember I would feel guilty about having money, because it's like, who am I to have money when there's people who are starving and losing their homes and whatever? But the truth is, money is an abundant resource, and me having money isn't taking it away from other people. As a matter of fact, it's putting it in the hands of a good steward. So I can either donate money, or I can educate people on how to manage their finances so that they don't lose their homes or they're not in a position where they can't afford food. So it was really the difference between a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. And because the truth is, money is abundant because money is energy. But I was blindly following a belief that wasn't even mine. And honestly, on a logical, rational level, I didn't agree with it, but it was so embedded in my subconscious that I was blindly following it. So again, question something, just one thing, just take one small step at a time. I highly recommend doing this for money, but you can do it for anything. But who told me this, and do I actually agree? And now that you're starting to question the rules that you've been living by, the next question is, what is it actually costing you to live this way? Because in video 3 of Against the Grain, Designing a Life That Actually Feels Good, we're talking about something most people don't even realize they're experiencing. And that is the feeling where your life looks good on paper, but you don't feel anything inside. So I will see you in the next video.